Good morning. It's Friday, January 22nd. I'm Jason Stanton. I serve as senior pastor at First Lutheran on Alaska. This is my morning musing. I saw that Pastor Karen spoke about Amanda Gorman recently, yesterday, and as much as I would maybe say what an amazing poem, and the way she delivered it was just incredible to me. As a preacher, as someone who tries to not only communicate a message to people, but also inspire people through how I communicate that, I'm astounded at what gifts she brought to that inaugural. But I'm in the midst of our 21-day challenge at First Lutheran, as we read more and see more and learn more and reflect more on racial equity. And today's reading, I thought I'd just speak to it, especially as it is about white privilege. And in speaking about white privilege, also lifts up male privilege quite a bit. It also refers to heterosexual privilege. I've said this in different forums. I am privileged in pretty much every way I know how to be. There are very few things about my life that I don't fall in the category of just being privileged. And, white, straight men like myself, many of us hear that term privilege and think we're being pulled into a conversation about how we should feel guilty, how we should feel shame for being white, male, straight. And I think that's a big part of how this conversation can bring more healing and unity than what it typically has already. Because the result of being educated in my own privilege has not been to only feel guilt and shame, although I will admit there have been moments where it's like, oh, I never thought that me saying this or doing that would affect anyone in this or that way. Of course, guilt, maybe even shame, has been felt for me along a journey like this, but more than that, far more than that, it simply grows my heart to care for others less privileged than myself in ways that are helpful to them. It's a way for me to love my neighbor, which is the whole point of this life, I thought. So with that in mind, I thought I'd just lift up some of what we're reading for today. The author says, I decided to try to work on myself by identifying some of the daily effects of white privilege in my life. This is a white woman who's writing this. I've chosen those conditions which I think in my case attach somewhat more to skin color privilege than to class, religion, ethnic status, or geographical location, though of course all these other factors are intertwined. As far as I can see, my African American coworkers, friends, and acquaintances with whom I come into daily or frequent contact in this particular time, place, and line of work cannot count on most of these conditions. And then she lists, and I won't read them all, but 26 different items. Number 1, I can, if I wish, arrange to be in the company of people of my race most of the time. In my life, I'd say all the time. There are very few instances where that has been a challenge for me. Number 2, if I should need to move, I can be pretty sure of renting or purchasing housing in an area where I can afford and in which I'd want to live. Yep. I can be pretty sure that my neighbors in such a location will be neutral or pleasant to me. I can go shopping alone most of the time, pretty well assured that I will not be followed or harassed. I can turn on a TV or open to the front page of a paper and see people of my race widely represented, in a positive way. When I'm told about our national heritage or about civilization, I'm shown that people of my color made it what it is. I can be sure that my children will be given curricular materials that testify to the existence of their race. I remember actually in school growing up, I don't know if I asked it out loud, but I remember at least wondering, as I looked through the book, like, why doesn't anyone in here look like I had one friend that was, I think, Middle Eastern descent. I don't know exactly where, but he certainly wasn't white. I had a couple friends that were of Mexican origin, and so they too weren't white, and yet all the people in the book, they were only white. Um, how would that how would that change my understanding of myself as a kid if nobody in my textbook looked like me? Um, let's see. Whether I use checks, credit cards, or cash, I can count on my skin color not to work against the appearance of financial reliability. I can arrange to protect my children most of the time from people who might not like them. I can speak in public to a powerful male group without putting my race on trial, or for me, my gender. I can do well in a challenging situation without being called a credit to my race. This actually I saw with Amanda Gorman yesterday, or Wednesday, that she was a credit to her race, as though that needed to be said. How about she's a credit to humanity? All these little 26 things, and each one of them is inescapably true. And it's not, they're not a bunch of things that a white male like myself chooses to put on other people. But once I learn to admit that it is true for other people, that those challenges exist, well, that's going to hopefully lower my sense of entitlement for when I go into certain places and experience certain things, remembering that if I think it's so hard for myself, just think what it's like for women, for people of color, for disadvantaged, marginalized people. And that's what this 20-day challenge keeps doing for me, is not educating me so that I'll just, self-loathe, but that I may be better informed to advocate on behalf of others, but to also just enlarge my heart for the sake of those who are seen poorly without earning any of those looks or feelings. So I'll keep at this challenge to keep faith alive.